How's it going, guys? I hope you guys had a great week. So it is that time of the year again, guys. It's time to bring you my top 10 games of 2020. So 2021 is officially here, and let's reflect back on the previous year. Of course, this top 10 is based on the games that I have played, so it may be a little bit different to some of yours or some other ones out there. But these are just some of the games I played this year that I really enjoyed and made my list. Before we jump into the list, I do have a couple of honourable mentions that I did want to talk about, more specifically Hades and Immortals Phoenix Rising. Those games are not on this list simply for the pure fact that I haven't played enough of them in order to make like a sound judgment as to where they would be on my top 10 list. But I am playing them at the moment and I'm really enjoying them. I highly recommend them to any of you interested. I'm very much enjoying them, but yeah, they're not on here, but I wanted to mention them because they are very good games in their own respect, and I could definitely understand why they may be on your top 10 list if you've played them to completion. But without further ado, let's just jump in and let's talk about this. I'm going to try and keep this as succinct as possible. So here are my top 10 games of 2020. Number 10, Spider-Man Miles Morales. So I played this at the end of the year. It was one of the first games I played on my PlayStation 5. It's obviously an exclusive on that. And it's not really a sequel to Spider-Man 2. I consider it more kind of like extended DLC. But what is there is really good. I really enjoyed it. The amazing web swinging mechanics are back. We get to play as Miles, so that's really cool. He handles very different to Peter Parker. Even his animations are different, but they have introduced some new additions to the game. There's new combat moves, which are just really awesome. His new Venom moves are really cool, and they're just really awesome to string together. There are less gadgets than there were in the original Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4, but that is because of the Venom moves, and I like it. It just makes Miles feel very different. It's a much shorter game than Spider-Man, so you can beat the game in, I'd say, about 10 to 12 hours roughly, so it's not very long. But what is here is good. It's great to be back in the world of Spider-Man, and I really enjoyed my time with Spider-Man Miles Morales, but it is number 10 on the list because I consider it more extended DLC, and I consider very much that it is setting up for Spider-Man 2, which I'm really looking forward to. So that's why it's number 10 on my list. Number 9, Doom Eternal. So this came out back in March. There were a lot of really good games that came out in March, and of course, if you don't know, it's an action shooter. It's the sequel to 2016's Doom, and oh my god, I had so much fun with this game. It's one of the best action shooters out there at the moment. There were some new additions in the game. The new grapple mechanic was really fun, but you get exactly what you think you would get with Doom Eternal, which is just fun, fast-paced combat, a really kick-ass soundtrack that's just awesome, some slick combat, great variety of weapons. It's really good game, and I highly recommend it. If you played the original Doom in 2016, then you totally should pick up Doom Eternal. It is well worth playing. I think it's on the Xbox Game Pass at the moment, especially on PC. I have seen it on there, but it's very good, and yeah, I really enjoyed my time with it, and that's why it's number 9 on my list. Number 8, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. So this came out at the end of the year on the 20th of November. It's a Switch exclusive, and I was not expecting to enjoy this game as much as I did. For those of you that might not know much about it, obviously it's from team that did Dynasty Warriors. So we had the original Hyrule Warriors a couple of years ago. This one is based on Breath of the Wild. It is advertised as a prequel to Breath of the Wild, so it's set 100 years before the events of Breath of the Wild and when Ganon first sort of materializes. But you know what? It is more than a prequel. I'm not going to talk too much about the story because I don't want to spoil you guys, but events happen in the story that take it in a new and interesting direction. There's lots of really interesting twists and changes. And yeah, if you've played Breath of the Wild and you really enjoyed it, you enjoyed the world, you enjoyed the characters, then yeah, I cannot recommend this game enough. It's fabulous. It's amazing to be able to go back and actually see areas in Breath of the Wild that were kind of destroyed, but to see them in their original form. It fleshes out a lot of the side cast of characters, so the champions and side characters are very well heavily fleshed out. The combat is really fluid and fun. There are plenty of playable characters in the game. The levels are also really fun and well designed, and you get to pilot some of the divine beasts, which is just awesome. Those moments are just really, really, really epic. But what I loved about it is they took certain mechanics in Breath of the Wild and brought them into Age of Calamity. So the use of the Sheikah Slate and everything in the combat, building up the stagger gauge, the way you can block sort of moves, and yeah, it's just really fun. Like, you will see all the little head nods and all the little Easter eggs, and this basically is pure fan service, but it's glorious fan service, and I loved every moment of it from start to finish. Really enjoyed my time with it, and that is why it's number 8 on my list. Number 7, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So this again came out in November. I've been playing a lot of it over the Christmas period, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I haven't completed the game, but I think I've played enough to make a judgment on it. It's fab. It's really, really good. It's taking Assassin's Creed in a new direction that is interesting. This is the team that did Assassin's Creed Origins and also Black Flag. So they are very much a team that like to innovate, that like to do new things. Obviously with Origins, they introduced a lot of RPG mechanics, dialogue choices. Those are back and definitely ramped up. The RPG elements are ramped up a lot in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I'm really enjoying the story so far. It is a Viking fantasy game. It's a fabulous game. I'm a big fan of Vikings and Viking mythology, Norse mythology. Obviously, I loved God of War. I really also enjoy watching the Vikings show on Amazon Prime. Duncan and I are like right up to the final season, and we just love it, you know. So it's great. This is me living out my Viking fantasy. You get to do raids. It's really cool. The characters are also really interesting, and the character of Eivor as well I find really interesting and likable. What I really enjoy about the game though is the changes to exploration that they've introduced. For me, I've been a little bit bored with a lot of Ubisoft open world games in recent years, but they have actually introduced a new kind of exploration system in that the map is not just cluttered with lots of waypoints and markers, but with spots of light, and each light signifies something different. So if it's a golden light, this usually signifies wealth. This could be an upgrade for an ability, it could be armor, weapons, or it could be ingot or materials that you need to upgrade your armor sets. If it's a white, then it tends to be a mystery. That could be an artifact, a legendary beast, a side mission. So the game very much does encourage you to explore the world, and you never know what you're going to find, and that's really fun and really interesting. So I'm really enjoying the exploration. It's a gorgeous looking game as well, and the combat is definitely feels more weighty and better than Odyssey did. It is visceral in some parts, and I'm really enjoying my time with Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's probably one of the best Assassin's Creed games to come out in recent years. I would say it's even better than Odyssey and Origins, and it's definitely up there with Assassin's Creed Black Flag for me in terms of, you know, my favorite Assassin's Creed games. And I'm looking forward to playing more and finishing the story and just exploring more and seeing where it goes. But that is why it's number 7 on my list. Number 6, Star Wars Squadrons. So this came out in October. It is by Motive Studios. Do you know what? I did not think I would have another Star Wars game on my list, because last year I had Jedi Fallen Order. But I've got to say, EA have really stepped up their game when it comes to their Star Wars franchises, which is great to see. So I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. It's probably one of the biggest surprises of 2020 for me. The game itself is a nice sort of small contained game. You can beat the main story campaign in about 8 to 10 hours, and you get to play as either like the Rebel Alliance or the Imperial, sort of the Empire. You play as part of a crew, as a pilot in that. You get to handle different classes of ships and play through missions and space battles and fleet battles. The story campaign is actually really fun, really engaging. The level designs are really great, really fun mission objectives as well. But it's also really well priced. I think when it came out, it was $34.99. And that's because of the size of the game, but I think at the moment you can get it for like £21 in the sale, so it's very, very, very well priced at that. I highly recommend it. And then also Motive have also been updating it with free additional content. There's no microtransactions to be seen, which is great, and it fully supports VR, and that definitely is the ultimate, way to play this game. It is every Star Wars fan's fantasy to be sat in the cockpit. The minute-to-minute gameplay and combat is so much fun. The dogfights are so much fun. There is so much attention to detail in this game. You can very much tell that it was designed by a team that were passionate about the project, and that really bleeds into every element of the game. And oh my god, like I giggled from start to finish and just loved every moment of it, and that's why it's number 6 on my list. Number 5, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. So this came out back in March, on the 11th of March. It is an exclusive available on the Xbox One and PC. And it is available, of course, on the Xbox Game Pass. For me, Ori has always been one of the best platforming games. I loved Ori and the Blind Forest, and with Ori and the Will of the Wisps, the development team have just taken what was already an incredible game and perfected it even further. There are so many amazing quality of life improvements, most notably in the combat and really fun, engaging boss fights and leveling systems in the game. It is as beautiful as ever. It's got a gorgeous visual art style, a hauntingly beautiful soundtrack, and it's just one of the best platforming games that came out this year. I highly recommend it. If you have never played Ori, you definitely owe it to yourself to pick up this game and play it. It is challenging, but in a good way. It's accessible, and yeah, Ori and the Will of the Wisp was just a golden gem this year, and I loved it. I really, really, really enjoyed it. And for a game that has no voice acting, it really does pull out emotions in you, and that's just the great sort of cinematography and art design and music, and it's just great. It's fabulous. So yeah, number 5 on my list. Number 4, The Last of Us Part 2. So this came out in June. Now, The Last of Us Part 2 has been probably one of the most controversial games that came out this year. Very much people place themselves either in the camp that love or hate the direction that the franchise went in. Obviously, The Last of Us Part 2 had a lot to live up to. The Last of Us is considered a masterpiece. It's one of the best games of last generation. So expectations going into this were very, very high. And my feelings about the game changed so significantly throughout. When playing it, there were moments I freaking hated the story narrative choices that were taken, and then there were moments that made me think and reflect on the game. I would say playing The Last of Us Part 2 is most definitely an experience, and sometimes that experience can be incredibly painful to play. There are incredibly bold narrative choices. It's hard, it's a game that you very much have to be in the frame of mind to play, but it's well worth playing it. It's worth sticking with it and playing it to completion, most definitely. As always, it's a Naughty Dog game, so it has fabulous animations. The voice acting and performance in this game is just outstanding. It truly is outstanding, and it really does hit you, in the feels. It really does. There were also some quality of life improvements as well in terms of the gameplay. So obviously Ellie is a lot more maneuverable. She now has the ability to jump, to go prone, and that does give you more options in terms of gameplay and stealth. But I would say that the core gameplay loop is still very much the same. You know, it's still revolved around crafting, around exploration, around finding weapons. The gunplay still feels very much the same as The Last of Us, and it's probably for that reason that it hasn't moved higher up on my list, simply because I don't feel that Naughty Dog did enough to innovate on the series and to really move it forward, you know, into next generation. So I enjoyed the story. I hated the story sometimes, and I enjoyed it sometimes. It is very much a game that I did mostly enjoy playing and had some really great moments in it. But it's a very heavy game, and for that reason I don't really feel a need to go back and play it again, because it is very hard, you know, it is a very heavy game to play. So yeah, that's probably why it's number 4 on my list, but I would definitely recommend giving it a chance, you know. Don't make a judgment on this, don't listen to what everyone else is saying. Pick up this game, play it for yourself, and make your own judgment on it, because you know what, it might surprise you. And I know it has done that for many people, but that is why it's number 4 on my list. Number 3, Cyberpunk 2077. So this came out recently on the 10th of December. Now, yes, absolutely, the game has performance issues big time if you're playing it on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, but I'm playing it on the PlayStation 5, and yeah, I've had issues with performance. I have had some issues on certain missions and things, but for the majority of it, the game has been playable. It's been quite smooth in terms of frame rates. At the moment on PlayStation 5, it probably plays at 60 frames per second, and it still looks, you know, really gorgeous. But despite those performance issues, and they shouldn't exist, I agree, the game should have been delayed, it should have been postponed. But despite those performance issues, when the game is running and when it's playing, the core of what is there is a great RPG experience like no other. The world of Cyberpunk 2077 is incredible. It's so like visually stunning. It's so full of life and character. There's so much going on. The story and side cast of characters, the main character of V as well. I'm playing a female V. They're just really well written, really well fleshed out, really engaging. It's what you would expect from a CD Projekt Red game, a really good story. And then of course on top of that, the RPG elements in terms of crafting and leveling are really strong. There's a lot of replay value with the game in terms of how you spec your character into different classes, and I'm really enjoying that at the moment. And the gunplay and gameplay loop is just really enjoyable. The sandbox nature of the level designs is really engaging. You can attack and approach every mission differently depending on what you've spec'd into and what you've unlocked and where your skills are based. So yeah, it's just really great. And then obviously, yeah, the gunplay, the guns feel incredible, particularly the precision rifle. Oh my god, like that weapon, I just love it. I'm really enjoying the gameplay a lot, and it just keeps pulling me back in, and that's a sign of a very good game. And I think, you know, when the game has been tweaked and has been improved in terms of its performance, it's always going to be tainted to a degree because of the way that it released, but people may look back on the game a little bit more favourably than they do currently, kind of like what happened with The Witcher 3 when that came out. But there are issues with the game. It isn't a perfect game by any stretch, not just because of the performance issues, but there are a lot of quality of life changes that are needed to the game with its performance issues, and there are some features that have been bafflingly left out and are missing, and I'm just surprised by these, and I'll cover these in more depth in my review. But I've enjoyed my time with Cyberpunk 2077, but it isn't a perfect game, and it doesn't deserve Game of the Year because of all the issues that it does have, but it's still a damn enjoyable game and a really good story and a great RPG. So I definitely recommend people to pick it up maybe next year when there are more patches out and the game is in a more stable state possibly. But yeah, don't miss it, don't give it a miss, definitely pick it up next year and give it a chance maybe later on. So that's why Cyberpunk is number 3 on my list. Number 2, Ghost of Tsushima. So this came back out in July. Oh my god, this game for me, number 1 and number 2, like flipped back and forth so many times. I just love Ghost of Tsushima. It is everybody's samurai fantasy. The game is gorgeous. It's one of the most visually stunning games of 2020. It's so cinematic. The island of Tsushima is so gorgeous. As someone who's lived in Japan as well for a time, I see all the little references and little head nods, and I heart it so much. I love it so much. But then on top of that, the core of what's there is just incredible. The exploration is done so well. It's handled so organically with all the visual clues in the world and the hints on where to go to explore things. It has some of the most amazing combat in any of the games that came out this year. The stance system is fabulous. The different gadgets that you've got at your disposal, the abilities, particularly when you do unlock the ghost ability, oh my god. But the combat is just so much fun, and then you can really choose how to approach missions how you want. So you can either go in stealthily and assassinate everyone like a ninja, or you can actually stand off against people and face people, you know, face to face in the old samurai tradition. It is so gorgeous, and it's very clear that it's been developed by a team that are very passionate about, you know, what they do and about this game, and there's so much heart there, and it's just incredible. And then it does have a really good strong storyline with compelling characters that are really likable, and you get to know them throughout the course of the story. Yeah, the story is definitely predictable in places, and there are definitely story beats that you can see coming a mile away, and that's probably why it's not number one on my list, because I think my number one choice had a better storyline and just better characters. But what is there is still really great. And then on top of that, we also got the Ghost of Tsushima Legends free multiplayer, which offers a whole multiplayer component completely for free, with a 2-player co-op storyline, as well as, you know, multiplayer raids and 4-player co-op and waves, and it's just so much fun. And there's all these classes that you can play. I'm really looking forward to jumping back in and playing more Ghost of Tsushima Legends. But yeah, I mean, it offers so much content and so much value for money. If you haven't played it and you have a PlayStation 4 or a PlayStation 5, I highly recommend it. I actually platinumed the game, and that is how much I loved it. I just could not pull myself away, and I just wanted to stay immersed in the world of feudal Japan. I just loved it. So that's why it's number 2 on my list. And finally, let's talk about my game of the year. So I'm sure you guys can predict what it's going to be. Number 1, Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's right, Final Fantasy VII Remake is my game of the year. This came out back in March. Just incredible. Like, words cannot express how much I loved this game. It was actually my first time playing Final Fantasy VII. I never got to play the original, and so I came into this with a completely fresh perspective, and I just fell in love. I fell in love with the world of Final Fantasy VII. I can absolutely see why it's many people's favorite Final Fantasy game. The characters are just so likable, so amazingly written, so well fleshed out. The storyline as well is really, really cool. To say that this remake is only the first 5 hours of the original game, that has me even more excited for the sequel and for the games to come. But it took those first 5 hours, and it really did just flesh them out, and it hasn't told the story in exactly the same way. So we get to learn more about side characters like Jessie and Biggs and Wedge that get their time to shine. The Wall Market section was just fabulous. It was amazing. It has incredible voice acting. The animations are gorgeous. It's like watching an anime. It is like watching Advent Children, and it's just incredible. And then the music is so beautiful. And then on top of all of that, you have incredible gameplay, really engaging gameplay systems, and it finds that perfect blend of the more traditional turn-based combat from the original Final Fantasy VII with the more action-focused real-time combat of Final Fantasy 15, and it finds that perfect blend between the two. So the combat is just really, really enjoyable. The RPG elements, the materia systems, just so accessible, as well as the leveling. It's just a complete package. It isn't, because it's only part 1 of what is going to be multiple games, but it has everything. And at first I was like, I can't put this as my #1 game because really it's not the complete story. It's only part 1 of Final Fantasy VII. But you know what? I thought, I can't do this game an injustice because what is there is incredible and I loved it. I cannot wait to jump back in. I want to platinum Final Fantasy VII Remake, but it's going to be hard to do so because there are some achievements in there that are so difficult and are going to require multiple playthroughs. But I'm going to aim to do it before the next part comes out. But even the way that they've done the storyline, it is taking the story potentially in a new interesting direction. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. But Final Fantasy VII Remake was without a doubt my game of the year. And that was a year that already had a lot of very, very strong contenders. So to come out on top, well done. Really, really good. So there you have it, guys. There is my top 10 games of 2020. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. What would your top 10 games be? Are there any games that you think are missing from this list? Please let me know in the comment section. Hope you guys, of course, are having a great week. Hope you guys had a great start of the year. I'll be back again with my next video, which will be talking about my most anticipated games coming up in 2021. So look forward to that. But anyway, hope you guys having a great week. Take care, of course, and as always, happy gaming. Bye, guys.